news of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman, have you made a decision as to whether or not you want to testify in this case?
With values that never die.
There are certainly a lot of controversies or scandals brewing right now when it comes to the Obama administration.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Dealing with the federal government is not always high-tech, and it's not always user-friendly.
The stories that matter.
This is a massive escalation in the tension here in Egypt.
The issues that count.
I don't know why the media tries to make this into a sensation. We have never hidden the fact that we supply Syria with weapons.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
He's got the red, white, blue flying high on the farm. Semper Fi tattooed on his left arm. Spend a little more in the store for a tag. In the back it says USA.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. Thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. This week, heartbreaking news, the confirmation of the death of another American hostage. The beautiful Kayla Mueller, a young woman just shy of her 25th birthday, went over to Syria to help the refugees. A lovely, lovely young girl with a heart as good as gold. There's no other way to say it. Captured by ISIS, and this week it has been confirmed that she is dead. Her family, as we all are utterly heartbroken. Listen to her aunt, full of grief.
She has done more in her incredible 26 years than many people could ever imagine doing in their lifetime. The world wants to be more like Kayla. And if that is her legacy and the footprint that she leaves on the world, then that is a wonderful thing. I have come to see there is good in every situation. Sometimes we just have to look for it. And right now that's what we're all trying to do. She had a quiet, calming presence. She was a free spirit, always standing up for those who were suffering and wanting to be their voice.
Well, you know, heartbreak for the family, heartbreak for all of us. It seems that with the Obama presidency, another day, another American killed. This is the fourth American hostage killed. And what did the president do? He came out with statements about how we're going to bring these people to justice. But right now, his words just ring hollow. You know, if you think about a young woman like Kayla Mueller, she was truly beautiful, full of love for one's neighbor. That's what strikes me the most about her. She's a refreshing person to observe. I mean, this is somebody who, while she was captured, wrote a letter to her family. And what does she say in that letter? I want to quote a few passages that I think are so moving. Quote, "If you could say I have suffered at all throughout this whole experience, it is only in knowing how much suffering I have put you all through." So you see, in her sentiments, she is not concerned about her own suffering, not concerned about what might happen next. But what she is concerned about is how her family is suffering. And again, she writes, quote, "I have a lot of fight left inside of me. I'm not breaking down, and I will not give in no matter how long it takes. I know you would want me to remain strong. That is exactly what I am doing. Do not fear for me. Continue to pray, as will I, and by God's will, we will be together soon." You see how in everything she writes, she seems so concerned about how her loved ones are reacting to her kidnapping and possibly her impending death. What a selfless, beautiful young woman. When you think, too, about how tragic this is, it's just unspeakable because ISIS is breaking all the rules of warfare. It's one thing to attack American soldiers. They are warriors in the field. And as much as our hearts break when that happens, we can say, well, that's within the rules of war. It's another thing, though, to go out there and kill journalists, as we saw with the other hostages that were killed. Aid workers, that's a whole other level of barbarity. And then I think we're taking it to a whole new level of just grotesque behavior when the person that is killed is a woman. Usually women and children are off limits. And for crying out loud, a female aid worker helping children. It's beyond sick. What strikes me here is those images of Kayla Mueller. She's a beautiful young woman with so much life that should have been led. So young, in her mid-20s. I think of the age, 25 and then 26 by the time she passed away. I compare my own life to that. I think about, what was I doing at that age? Well, you know, at 25, I was beginning to plan my wedding. I was so full of happiness. I was engaged. I was going to marry the man of my dreams, the man I had been in love with for 10 years, and I just couldn't wait. And then at 26, in the summer of 26, the happiest day of my life, when I was 26 years old, in July, was the day that I walked down the aisle, brimming with joy, committing myself to my husband. And I think of what a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny day that was, celebrating with family and friends, the tremendous happiness in my heart, and how many more years after that I've had the great blessing to live. And I'm so sad for Kayla that in her mid-20s, this is not what would happen to her, as happens to so many women when they marry and start a family and so much more life to come. She was really at the beginning of her life. I think of the mid-20s almost as that's really when you really begin to live and you really claim your youthful adulthood as truly your own, and you forge your life and make it whatever your vision is. And for Kayla, that will never be. That will never be. Well, I think, though, that her aunt is saying something very profound. This woman is moving, Kayla is. There is something about her presence and her sacrifice that reverberates. And she will have a legacy that has an impact. She epitomizes selfless love. And that is truly, truly beautiful. So we've got to say, in the short years that she lived, she has made a beautiful impact. And we thank her for that. And I hope that many of us can emulate her utter selflessness. That's one thing that ISIS cannot kill. The beauty of her shines far brighter than the horrendous evil that is in their hearts. Well, how are we reacting here in the United States of America? The president is saying he wants Congress to authorize the use of military force, and he is trying to gin up a much more concerted war effort. Listen to the president.
Now, make no mistake, this is a difficult mission, and it will remain difficult for some time. It's going to take time to dislodge these terrorists, especially from urban areas. But our coalition is on the offensive. ISIL is on the defensive, and ISIL is going to lose. Its barbaric murders of so many people, including American hostages, are a desperate and revolting attempt to strike fear in the hearts of people it can never possibly win over by its ideas or its ideology, because it offers nothing but misery and death and destruction. And with vile groups like this, there's only one option. With our allies and partners, we are going to degrade and ultimately destroy this terrorist group.
Okay, so the president is asking for authorization to use military force, and everybody is asking him another question, a very important question that he doesn't seem to answer. What exactly is your strategy? You have many members of Congress saying, and even members of the intelligence community, the defense community, coming out in public interviews saying, the president does not have a comprehensive strategy. That's the number one problem that we are seeing here. In fact, even in that clip that we just played, the president is saying these are vile, barbaric murderers, etc., and that they're not going to win over. They're not even going to win over by their ideology. So he acknowledges there is an ideology there. And yet he has refused to explain to the American people what is that ideology? What are its roots? What is its nature? What is its vision? And then how do we combat it thoroughly and successfully? Another thing that really strikes me is that as the president is asking for Congress to give him powers, more powers to wage war, he's also saying through his national security advisor and by his own statements that this threat that we face is not existential, that there are worse dangers that we are facing, that climate change, for example, is possibly going to have a bigger impact on people's lives. Well, one of the things you've got to be able to do as a leader is to have one clear message. When you are asking the American people, give me more resources, give me a greater commitment to wage a war, you've got to make that case compelling. And one of the first things that most leaders do when you make a case for war is you explain that the threat we face is existential, is imminent, is urgent. That's how you get support for the nation to go to war. Instead, this president, he talks on multiple levels, multiple messages that conflict with each other. And then one of the most vexing problems of all, he keeps saying, well, we're not going to have boots on the ground. We're not going to have boots on the ground. When you go to war, you declare that there's an urgency as to why we need to go to war. You also state that we're going to marshal all our resources in order to achieve victory. You don't eliminate resources and options. You don't do that because you want to win. And also, you don't want to tell the enemy what you're preparing and what you're not preparing. For him, it's all about his political promises. That's what he cares about most. He had promised that he was going to be the president of peace. And that means withdrawing American boys from war theaters. But you can only ensure peace once you have real solid victories. And this man did not ensure that the victories that we had achieved in Iraq were protected. As a result, ISIS has blossomed, and now he wants us to give him the confidence to wage wars that we have seen clearly he is incapable of waging. That is the fundamental problem that we face here in America. We face an enemy that is determined, that has a strategy, that has an ideology, and that has no limits to what it is willing to do. In response to that, we have no strategy, we have limits, and we have a leader who has proven to be totally incompetent. As a result of this, sadly, I think we're going to see many more Americans killed before the tide of public opinion truly turns and truly gives us a leader that can achieve the victory that we must have in order to defeat this deadly enemy. This is Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at WorldTribune.com, sending out a special song to Kayla Mueller.
People fall in love in mysterious ways. Maybe just the touch of a hand. Well, me, I fall in love with you every single day.
The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
We don't need no education. We don't need no thought control.
How much education do we need to be the next president of the United States? It's what everyone's talking about because we have the governor of Wisconsin who is currently leading the GOP field, and he does not have a college degree. He's been a very successful politician. His record is outstanding, and now the spotlight is on him. Can he make the transition from a governor to a national leader? And I said this last week, and it may not have been the popular thing to say, but we did a whole segment on it. When I looked at his answers on ABC with Martha Raddatz, he was asked very specific questions about the war on Syria, and I thought his answers were superficial. And I said that he wouldn't even get a C in a college class that I was teaching, that his answers were far too vague, and that he was really going to have to pick up his game because now all eyes are on him. And for many people across the country, this is their first introduction of the man. They don't know what he's done in Wisconsin. Their first impression of him is right now. How is he faring? Every single word that he utters will be put under a microscope. So he is trying to build up some foreign policy credentials. He is on a trip to London, a trade mission, trying to expand his range of experience and travels so that he'll have a lot more to say about what he's done and where he's been by the time he's running for the top job. And yet a media firestorm has erupted over an exchange he had over there. Listen to this.
Can I finish with a question that it's almost a tradition now to ask visiting, particularly senior Republicans who come to London. And it's not about cheese, and it's not about foreign affairs. It's actually about evolution. Are you comfortable with the idea of evolution? Do you believe in it? Do you accept it?
For me, I'm gonna punt on that one as well.
No,
that does you
really.
That's a question a politician shouldn't be involved in one way or the other on it. So I'm going to leave that up to you.
But any British politician, right or left wing, would laugh and say, "Yes, of course, evolution is true." But
to me, I said it's just one of those where I'm here to talk about trade, not to pontificate another issue.
That was an unforced error. Look, as a politician, you're going to be asked many, many different questions. That question is the kind of question that even though you're over there in a trade mission, you've got to be able to answer that. That is a basic question. And for him to say he was going to punt on that makes him appear to be unprepared. He then came out with a statement saying that from his perspective, both faith and science are in harmony, and he has no problem with the theory of evolution. So he tried to recover. Yet the damage has been done because right now the spotlight is on his level of education. Howard Dean has pounced on this. Listen.
This is a particular problem from Scott Walker, which has not been an issue yet, but it will. Scott Walker, were he to become president, would be the first president in many generations who did not have a college degree. He's never finished.
Right.
So the issue here is not just an issue of dancing around the question of evolution for political reasons. The issue is How well educated is this guy? And that's the problem.
Are you serious?
I am absolutely.
I like that. I like that
you
line. That was a good line.
Yeah.
You're saying
he didn't finish his senior year, so he didn't get all the stuff.
He didn't finish college?
I think there are going to be a lot of people who worry about having.
Do you worry about people that don't finish college?
I worry about people being president of the United States, not knowing much about the world and not knowing much about science.
Oh,
I worry about
God.
That.
Let's see. Let's name the people that didn't finish college that have changed this world.
Harry Truman, who was a great president.
Did Bill Gates finish college? I think Bill Gates
is a little on the different. Nobody's accusing Scott Walker of having the intellect of Bill Gates.
Well, nobody's accusing Scott Walker of being dumb because he didn't graduate from college, except you.
I didn't say.
That was an exchange on Morning Joe with Howard Dean, and I think that as much as we want to rush to the defense of Scott Walker, we've got to be a little bit worried now, and I'll tell you why. It's not that he didn't finish college that's a problem, because there are so many people who don't finish college and are very intelligent and they go on to do great things. I mean, that is a known and proven fact. I don't think that that's beyond dispute. In fact, some people are saying some of our most intelligent presidents tend to be our worst presidents. So that means, some of our most highly educated presidents tend to be our worst presidents. So I do believe that you don't necessarily need a college education in order to be successful at any endeavor. However, the problem that we face is this. You do need knowledge to be president of the United States. You do need to be well-read. There are many people who don't have a college degree but are extremely knowledgeable and well-read, and they carry themselves very well on any topic. The problem that Scott Walker has is his knowledge appears to be very thin. And I'm not talking knowledge about, the theory of gravity or something like that. I'm talking about knowledge regarding issues that are currently in the news, whether they are in the news on a cultural level, social level, or foreign policy news. He doesn't seem to be read on the issues that people are talking about. That is a problem. Last week, I raised the issue and I said, look, unless he wants to go down the road of being another Rick Perry, the governor of Texas that everyone was buzzing about, who blew up on the national stage, or Sarah Palin, same thing happened to her. Successful governor of Alaska, but then you put the national spotlight on her and she did not seem to have the depth there, the depth of knowledge. In fairness, this is not a media hit job or anything like that. This is going to be a problem. Now, either Scott Walker picks up his game immediately, or you're going to see that those poll numbers are going to drop, because many people are going to conclude that he will not be able to stand to the withering criticism and the withering tests that will be placed upon him in the next couple of months and years. There's one thing I learned about being in Washington, D.C. All the knives are out all the time, and you've got to be ready. And you've got to be the cream of the crop. So on the one hand, I think he's intelligent. I think he's capable. I think he's competent. I think he's got the experience. And I think he's got a great record. But right now, he is faltering when the national spotlight is on him. And he had better do much, much more work and express himself with a lot more conviction and depth if he wants to continue to be at the top of the polls. Now, you want to contrast his answers that we reviewed extensively last week when he was asked by Martha Raddatz, what are you going to do about Syria? He hemmed and hawed and hesitated, and he didn't really seem to have a coherent answer. And then he was kind of boxed into saying, yes, I would put boots on the ground. And his answer came across as amateurish. I want to contrast that with how Senator Ted Cruz handles the media. And I want you to observe, this is one cagey, savvy answer without compromising principles. Listen.
I don't believe right now American boots on the ground, and the reason is we have boots on the ground already with the Kurds. The Peshmerga are trained, effective fighters. They are close allies of us. Just today, I met with the president of Kurdistan, and he made clear that the Peshmerga are ready to fight. They are fighting ISIS. But I'll tell you, George, it makes no sense. Our government is not providing military weapons effectively to the Kurds. Instead, they're shuttling it all to Baghdad, and Baghdad is very slow in getting it to the Kurds. We need to arm the Kurds, and we need to use the Peshmerga as boots on the ground. They're effective, they're ready, they're our close allies.
But if that's not enough, would you be willing to send American ground troops into that battle?
Look, we need to accomplish the mission, and the mission should be defeating ISIS before they succeed in carrying out more horrific acts of terror, before they succeed in murdering Americans. If need be, we should go that step, but it should be driven by the mission. And the first step should be to effectively arm the Peshmerga, use them as boots on the ground.
Well, look, you can see where all of this is going. You can see that by 2016, we're going to be debating in this country how much of our military resources are we going to be committing to this war against ISIS. And there's a perception now amongst Democrats that a Republican candidate that goes forward and says, yes, I'm prepared to possibly put boots on the ground is going to lose. And so that's why they're going to press this theme going forward, because they think that one of the ways to win is to present themselves as the ones that are not going to engage American forces in another conflict around the world. So they're trying to put Republicans in a box, trying to put them in a place that, well, maybe the public won't support them. Now, Senator Ted Cruz is very cagey. He sees the game, but he's also a man of principle. And I just want to applaud him. His answer was brilliant. It showed an intimate knowledge of what is happening now. He, in such a short soundbite, referenced his own contact with the president of the Kurds. He referenced his knowledge of why the Kurds are not getting weapons. And he didn't betray any core values, because he said, well, if the mission at some point would require it, yes, we would put boots on the ground. So essentially, he gave an answer that was nuanced, that was detailed, that showed a lot of knowledge, conviction, and vision. That is a good answer, and that's a great way to handle the media. In fact, I was impressed by that entire interview. At one point, he was asked, well, the leadership of your party is... he was asked questions about their conduct with the omnibus bill. And he said, no, that's the leadership. That's not me. So he was able to quickly distinguish himself from Republican parties that he disagrees with. He was able to slice and dice beautifully. That is a man who, at least from the point of view of knowing the issues and knowing how to articulate them and dealing with a hostile media, is able to do it right. He knows what he's doing. So my ideal candidate would combine the savvy of Ted Cruz, the conviction of Ted Cruz and knowledge on foreign policy and also on national issues, with the executive leadership and record of somebody like Scott Walker. Let me dream for a moment that somehow we'll find a candidate that has the whole package. Well, let me shift gears here for a moment and say, at the end of last year, we did a survey of the best and worst, and I said that my favorite song of the year had been a song sung by Sam Smith. Well, this year on Sunday, I watched the Grammys, and I was eager to see who the folks, how the folks I'm rooting for fared. And Sam Smith did extremely well. He won 4 Grammys, and I thought extremely well deserved. We had overall, as I said last year, a very good year in music. I was also pleasantly surprised. You remember at last year's Grammy, I wrote a piece about how Beyonce and Jay-Z danced on stage in a deplorable manner. And yet at this year's Grammy, it was pretty tame. the focus, for the most part, was on the music. I mean, the most scandalous thing that happened was, Madonna did a little bit of a racy number on stage, but even that, her lyrics were all about, check this out, love. That's the big revolution she's pushing now, love. The most scandalous part was just a shot of her baring her buttocks, but that was off stage. On stage, this year, the Grammys were pretty classy and serious, very well executed, with a lot of really spectacular songs. And one moment in particular really struck me. You know, generally, I'm not too much of a fan of introducing social causes into an entertainment show. But there's an exception. There was a woman who came on stage, and her testimony was so moving. I really want to play it for all of you out there, especially those who might really need to hear this particular message. Roll it.
After a year of passionate romance with a handsome, charismatic man, I was stunned when he began to abuse me. I believed he was lashing out because he was in pain and needed help. I believed my compassion could restore him and our relationship. My empathy was used against me. I was terrified of him and ashamed I was in this position. What bound me to him was my desire to heal him. My compassion was incomplete because it did not include me. When he threatened to kill me, I knew I had to escape. I revealed the truth to my mom, and she encouraged me to seek help at a local domestic violence shelter. This conversation saved my life. Authentic love does not devalue another human being. Authentic love does not silence, shame, or abuse. If you are in a relationship with someone who does not honor and respect you, I want you to know that you are worthy of love. Please reach out for help. Your voice will save you. Let it extend into the night. Let it part the darkness. Let it set you free to know who you truly are. Valuable, beautiful, loved.
Beautiful moment there. That was Brooke Axtell. She was a victim of domestic violence, as you can hear so clearly in her voice. What I found most impressive, though, was the line, "My empathy was used against me." I can't tell you how many times I have sat and counseled women that are being abused emotionally, verbally, psychologically, and even physically. And so much of what they're saying is all about how him, what he needs. And their empathy is all for him and not for themselves. And I also was struck by when she said that she was so concerned to heal him at the neglect of herself. Her compassion was incomplete. So many women out there that I have talked to, their compassion is all for him and not enough for themselves. And I hope that this message reaches many hearts and minds and empowers women, especially those experiencing any kind of violence or abuse, to break free and provide great love and compassion to themselves. Thank you, Brooke Axtell, for such a beautiful, strong, brilliant, concise, and insightful message. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com, upholding values that are never going to die.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
Welcome to American Heartland with Dr. Grace. We talk so much on this broadcast about how Obama deceives the American people, but there's another individual on the international stage that is a deceiver par excellence. He is the Russian leader, Vladimir Putin, and he took over the Crimea. He has also made encroachments into eastern Ukraine. The Western powers have been trying to stop him, and yet his advances continue. Here to discuss this with us today is an author, an international businessman, and an economist. He has written the book Proof of God in Heaven. That book is available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. He is Mr. Marius Forte. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, we spoke last time. You and I both said when Vladimir Putin took over the Crimea that it was going to continue, that his march was not going to stop, and that the Western powers were essentially being appeasers, and that was not going to work. Can you fill us in on what has happened since then? And we hear that there's an agreement that's been struck this week. Tell us all about that.
Let me just look at a broader picture. The conversation about what to do in the Ukraine is one that has been held since the very beginning of history. When facing an aggressor that is hell-bent, regardless of his own cost, to start a conflict, has appeasement ever worked? Or even better, could it work? Of course not. The outcome is pretty much a given if you, as a weaker chess player, face a better chess player. The better chess player must most probably win. Without doubt, Putin is a much better chess player. We have a West that is not unified. We have a West that is run by bureaucrats, by community organizers, by people that really don't understand history. There are no real leaders. Very few leaders could stand up to Putin anyway, because he truly is a leader, if you agree with him or not. But in the West, we don't really have leaders. We make agreements. We fall for the Russian trap of calling the Russian invading forces rebels. These are not rebels. These are Russian forces. They have hundreds and hundreds of trucks, white trucks, same make, same model, that basically bring weapons and arms into the eastern Ukraine. And we say these are rebels. They have tanks. They just moved 50 tanks last Sunday across the border while they were negotiating. These are Russian tanks. These are not rebel tanks. And we in the Western press fall for that nonsense by calling them rebels. Russia is invading eastern Ukraine. They took Crimea. They took Georgia. Next in their conquest is obviously the Baltic states. We have to understand that NATO today is a paper tiger. Germany, during the Cold War, had 3,500 battle tanks. Today they have 400. 200 of those are battle-ready. Belgium, Holland has no more battle tanks. That means Russia knows that NATO militarily cannot stand up to him. He's using exactly the same tactic that Hitler did. It's Islami tactic. Slice by slice, he's slicing up the former Soviet Empire, and he's succeeding and he's winning. And we think by imposing sanctions on him, we will make any kind of grounds. Hitler, at the beginning of the war, Second World War, knew that this war will probably cost him 2 million men, 2 million soldiers. Well, the cost was much higher. But for somebody who is willing to accept that kind of toll, to think about sanctions and that sanctions would actually hurt him or bite him, is ludicrous.
What are your thoughts on this recent ceasefire? What does the agreement consist of, and what do you think is actually really going on?
Well, I think the only one who really put it into the right words, I just read an interview with German's Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who said that this agreement is just another downfall of Europe, of not being unified. They've agreed on a ceasefire. They agreed on a separation. While this is going on, the so-called rebels are keeping on taking further territory. Unless we stand up against Putin in a really firm way, Putin will march on. I just read another interview of Leonid Kravchuk, who was the first Ukrainian president of 91 to 94, yesterday in the largest Austrian newspaper. He said, if an aggressor doesn't get smacked on the snout, he will keep on being an aggressor. Putin's march on will not be stopped by agreements, by further negotiations. Certainly if we say, well, let's not send further arms to the Ukraine because that might tick him off, it's the same thing as saying, let's not send arms to the Poles because that might tick Hitler off. Hitler had a plan. We don't have a plan.
That's very well said. You know, there was a brilliant interview this weekend in the Wall Street Journal, and it's called The View from NATO's Russian Front. There's an interview with the commander of U.S. Army Europe. His name is Lieutenant General Frederick Ben Hodges. And he says very plainly, very clearly, look, the Russians have a 3-year plan. They have a 3-year plan to continue to build up armaments in eastern Ukraine. And they have a schedule, they have a strategy, they have a plan. This is really what's going on. And we don't have a counter strategy to cope with this.
If you look at the Baltic states, it will be a repetition of what happened in Ukraine. The Baltic states are next. They have Russian minorities. It really worked well for Russia in Crimea. It works very well for Russia in Georgia, as well as in eastern Ukraine. So they have a strategy of success. We have no strategy. We have basically people that don't understand this chess game. Like I said, weak bureaucrats that are leading Europe. So he knows this has worked. This will work further. And then he looks at the hard facts. The hard facts was, and I give an example, in 1936, when Hitler invaded the Rhineland, Germany had a much weaker army, a much weaker armed forces than France and England put together, and yet he did it because he was determined. Today, Russia has 15,000 battle tanks, way superior armed forces than Europe. Europe basically has no armed forces. So the tables have been turned. So we have an aggressor who is stronger, and we have people that lead us that are weaker. So the outcome is pretty much a given. That's what I said about a chess game. If you have a better, superior chess player, he will win. Putin will win. We have nobody in Europe that really stands up to Putin's strategy. Nobody.
Nobody. And in fact, we see that as we disarm, the Russians continue to build up armaments. So, as you say, they're only getting stronger as we are getting weaker. In addition, I've been pretty impressed how the Russians have become masterful at propaganda, really. I mean, they have a YouTube channel that has received 1 billion views. It's one of the most watched channels on the online video platform. And in that channel, you basically get the Russian view of things. And what we see is they've become extremely skilled at presenting their case and muddying the waters so that aggression doesn't appear necessarily to be as starkly what it is, pure, naked aggression.
You know, Putin has taken a lot from the National Socialists. Germany, of course, had a propaganda ministry that was headed by Goebbels. So they know that public opinion propaganda is most important. They're using and utilizing everything that modern technology can give them. Their strategy is not 3 years. Their strategy is much longer. They know Europe is in retreat. They know we don't have any leaders. They know we have no willpower. We have no willpower to stop them. The only armed forces that really exist that are superior to the Russians are Americans, but we have a community organizer who won't even call Islamic fascists. He just calls them terrorists. That's it, at every turn. So he knows we have no leadership in the West. So they're utilizing, building up their arms, using technology, using the internet, using everything at their disposal, and they're winning rapidly. And again, don't think of a 3-year plan. Think of this more of a 10, 15-year plan.
Now, what do you think the long-term objective is? Beyond, let's say they really are able to consolidate their hold over eastern Ukraine, what will they do next?
Just look at Putin. Putin is Russia. He is the dictator of Russia. He was a KGB, he was basically a KGB killer who lived in East Germany. He speaks fluent German. His idea was that he wants to reimpose the Soviet Union. He thinks, and he said so publicly, the worst day was the destruction of the Soviet Union, when it fell into different republics. He wants to recreate that. So after the Ukraine, and the Ukraine will fall, the Baltic states are next. And they're going to do the same thing again with Russian minorities, complaining. And these are very small populations. So the Ukraine has 44 million people. The Baltic states have very few people. These are tiny minorities. He will use the same book, the same strategy that he used in the Ukraine, in the Baltic states until somebody stops him.
Mm-hmm. What do you think immediately the U.S. should do? There is a great deal of calls, especially in Congress, that at least we should send defensive armaments. You have others much more hawkish saying, well, look, let's send both defensive and offensive arms. What do you think that the United States should be doing?
Right now, there's nothing that America can do because we don't have leadership. We can send an aircraft carrier too. These would be empty promises because Putin knows that Obama is an empty suit. So whatever we do has to be backed up by will. Unless we have a president, a newly elected president, understands world history, understands that we are steering towards a really bad conflict with Russia. And American forces are way superior. We have 12 aircraft carriers. Russia has one that's not even working. If we have an American president who's determined to stop Putin, he sends 4 aircraft carriers into the Black Sea and says, this is it. Here is the line, and a red line, not the way. Obviously, Obama broke his red lines, but somebody who really means business. Putin will respond absolutely to power and to somebody who's determined. Everything else is just a game, and the outcome is a given.
Right. Very well said. Excellent analysis. Now, last time you were here, we also spoke about the impending sanctions that the West was imposing on Russia. We hear since then that the Russian economy is suffering. It seems to have, hit a tremendous roadblock. But you and I had predicted that the sanctions wouldn't bite. So what happened? Can you explain what happened?
Well, the only reasons why Russia is suffering are Russia is an oil-based economy. There's really no products that Russia produces that the world buys. So their downfall right now is the weak oil price. It has very little to do with the sanctions. They put 135 businessmen and Russian officials on a blacklist, so they send somebody else over. I don't have to go myself in today's time. I can do a lot of things over the Internet. They put banking restrictions that the 5 largest state-owned banks in Russia are not allowed to get Western loans and credits. There's 1,000 ways you can transfer money. All these sanctions don't bite. What really bites Russia right now is the very low oil price, and that is something that could cripple Russia. But again, if you understand a chess game, you're willing to sacrifice pieces for the ultimate gain, which means you will win the game. So if you have a leader who is not threatened by sanctions, who doesn't care about sanctions, who is willing, in the case of Hitler, to say, I know this conflict will probably cost us 2 million soldiers to die, and he's willing to take that and buy into that, sacrifice. And the Russian peoples are world champions in sacrifice. The last war cost them 21 million dead people. That's an amazing death toll. So they know how to suffer. And if you have a Russian leader who's willing to accept that, then all of these sanctions will not work. Have they worked in the case of Iran? Iran wants the nuclear weapons. Have we stopped Iran in their quest? We always hear these leaders, these bureaucrats say, we will stop Iran. Are we anywhere closer to stopping Iran acquiring nuclear weapons? Absolutely not. They will have nuclear weapons. So sanctions only work against people that have responsibilities and have character and really care for their people. These dictators don't. So sanctions will not work.
Right. Now, when you say that this drop in oil prices has crippled the Russian economy, what impact will that have on their military objectives?
Well, Russia is building up their military tremendously. Of course, they're doing exactly the opposite, just like you stated correctly. They're building up their military while we are destroying ours. Literally, we are destroying our military. The Equestria is really biting the American military. Europe really has no more military. We are a paper tiger. So even when Hitler was surrounded by enemies, he built up his military, and that is the military complex in Russia is their holy cow, which will lead them to success, as Putin believes.
So you believe that there's no impact that their weakened economy is going to have on their military objectives?
No, there's an impact, but it's minuscule.
Minuscule impact, okay.
It will not stop Putin's quest. The only thing that that will stop Putin is a power, is a force. The only force in the world today is America. But we don't have leadership force. We don't have willpower. We don't have somebody who says enough. Unless we vote for somebody into power that has that authority and really believes in his own power, Russia will march on, even if we have superior power to him. If we're not willing to use what we have, it's meaningless.
Excellent and brilliant analysis. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Forte. He is an author, an international businessman, an economist. He has written The Proof of God in Heaven, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You're listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace. The stories that matter, the issues that count. This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.
It's that time of the show where we find someone that really needs to be told to just shut up. Well, this week we have two candidates on the same theme. One of them is President Barack Obama, who produced a really goofy video for BuzzFeed.com. The video is intended to bring more attention to Obamacare and get people to sign up before the deadline. And yet the president presents himself in a really goofy way, behaving in a manner unbecoming the highest office of the land. Even the Washington Post and the New York Times are lambasting him for his behavior, which demeans the office. Here's a small snippet of it.
The deadline for signing up for health insurance is February.
Not like any other Wednesday.
That's not right.
Wednesday.
February 15th. February 15th. In many cases, you can get health insurance for less than $100 a month. Just go to healthcare.gov to figure out how to sign up. February 15th.
Well, the video intends to show that we all do things in private that are similar. So you see one individual who seems to be like an ordinary guy who does things in private that the president of the United States also does in private. So the president is just like all of us, practicing before he gives a speech, etc. Now, I have many problems with this video. One of the most obvious is he shouldn't be doing what he's doing because it demeans the office, as we said. But another one is this. Even if you had a video that was just very classy and straightforward, we'd have to ask the question, why is the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, doing what amounts to a public service ad? It's such low-ball stuff. I mean, the president of the United States shouldn't do that, telling people to enroll by a specific deadline. I mean, that shows you how he doesn't fully grasp what his role is. And, of course, Nancy Pelosi also had to get her licks in, telling people that it's time to enroll. Check out her strategy.
Oh, and by the way, don't forget, Valentine's Day coming up. As a nice Valentine's Day, you can take your loved one to sign up for the Affordable Care Act.
Oh, yeah. When it's Valentine's Day, the first thing I think of, Pelosi, is let me get my husband and let's go out for a romantic day to sign up for Obamacare. Ridiculous. They're trying to be hip and happening and with it, and instead it is just backfiring, and they both need to be told to just shut up. And now to our mailbag. Please write to me. I want to hear your comments, your questions, your concerns, your criticisms. Everything is fair game. Values that never die at hotmail.com. Values that never die at hotmail.com. That's the email address. I have a letter here by Joe from Madison, Wisconsin. Dr. Grace, why has Jordan's response to the burning alive of a Jordanian soldier been so bold and decisive against terrorism, while President Obama still seems indifferent and lukewarm in the fight against ISIS? Well, Joe, haven't you heard? It's because climate change is a bigger threat. It's because we don't face an existential threat. That's the problem. Well, you know, Joe, he doesn't want to identify the enemy. And another problem, too, is that Americans are not as outraged as they should be. I want to see Americans in the streets like the Jordanians are in the streets. We have a letter, Robert from Shreveport, Louisiana. I disagree with your assessment of Scott Walker. As a former Wisconsin resident, I can tell you that he is a remarkable, learned man worthy to be the next president of the United States. Robert, I hear you. Great record. But regarding him being learned, I've got a lot of questions. As I said earlier, I don't mind that he's not college educated, but he's got to show that he has tremendous command of the facts and all the issues that are burning up the national scene. And one more letter, Jordan from Portland, Maine. Brian Williams must resign for lying about being shot down in a helicopter in Iraq. This is a disgrace to journalism and to real heroes who fought in Iraq. It is a disgrace, period, to be such a bold-faced liar. He has been suspended, and I hope that he's been suspended for 6 months, and I hope really that this is the last we see of Brian Williams. He is, in my view, toast. I've been told by my producer we have a little bit of more time, so we can go to one more letter, and that is Rosanna from Hartford, Connecticut. Dr. Grace, Chris Kyle is a hero. May God bless him and all soldiers who bravely fight for our freedom. Shame on left-wing activists who say otherwise. Indeed, and Chris Kyle is a hero both on the battlefield and now in our current culture wars, because American Sniper is putting a spotlight on the values of a community that is patriotic versus the values of a left-wing community that is not. So he's a hero twofold. You've been listening to Dr. Grace, the editor of Politics and Culture at worldtribune.com, upholding values that are never, ever going to die.
Here's what I tell everyone. I was born by God's dear grace in an extraordinary place.
This is American Heartland with Dr. Grace.